Good morning, Europe. Good afternoon, Southeast Asia. We are about to start our webinar, so welcome to everyone. We are going to discuss today the Hague system and the upcoming changes in the Vietnam landscape on the protection of design, and also we will have an heads up on what is going on so far. I am Marta Bettinazzi, and I am the IP Business Advisor of the Southeast Asia IPR SME Help Desk. And today I will be your moderator, while our expert is Mr. Son Duan, will be our main speaker. But before we get to the webinar itself, let me give you a brief introduction on how the platform works. As you can see from your screen, it's set to in a way that you can ask questions, clicking on the question box. You can type there and we will answer at the end during the Q&A. If you have any questions regarding practical stuff, you can also ask during the webinar itself. We welcome any questions, so we are looking up for a very alive and exchanging webinar. So the webinar today will be recorded, and you will find the recording on our website. Usually we notify you when it's going to be online, usually 3 to 4 days. As for the IPR Help Desk, you are now doing a webinar with us, but we also offer our other services. We have an inquiry helpline, which is always ready to answer your question in 3 working days. You can find on our website a lot of materials, and you can also take part on our trainings live if you happen to be in Southeast Asia or in Europe. As for the agenda, we will have an overview of Vietnam IP law and also how Vietnam will position itself inside the treaty that now regulates IP. Then we will have a description of what's the industrial design protection in Vietnam, from the condition of protection to the enforcement. And then we will focus on the innovation brought by the Hague agreement. So we will have an explanation of what the Hague agreement actually does for you and your company, and we will end it up with the watch out and tips, and finally the Q&A. Once more, we welcome all the kind of questions, and have a look at the screen. Please keep an eye on the screen, because there will be some polls during the webinar to keep this more interactive. As for our speaker, Mr. Son Duan is the founder and manager of the IP Max law firm, and is graduated in intellectual property from the George Washington University, and is a member of the Help Desk Pool of Experts since 2013. He has many many expertise, from trademark to patents to industrial design, and he helps both multinational corporation and small and medium enterprises to build up a good strategy for the protection of IP. So for now, it's all on my side, and I please welcome our speaker, Ms. Son Duan. The floor is yours.
Some information about the Vietnam generally, and the protection of industrial design, as well as the current IP law protecting industrial design in Vietnam, and the upcoming change, given that Vietnam have joined some important international agreement, free trade agreement, and particularly the Hague agreement on the protection of industrial design, international registration of industrial design. I will start with the overview about Vietnam. Vietnam, our beautiful country, have a long border. We have the border with China in the north, China with Laos and Cambodia in the west, and we have very young population with approximately 96.5 million people until 2019. Hanoi is our main capital in the north, where the IP office is located. And in the south, we have Ho Chi Minh City, the biggest commercial center in Vietnam. The languages we speak officially Vietnamese, but also English is very popular and French as well. Korean, Japanese, and Chinese getting more and more popular because of the more and more investor and Korean, Japanese, and Chinese community getting in Vietnam. Overview of the IP system in Vietnam. Before 1954, we are in the French time then. The IP legal system is heavily influenced by the French civil law, where the IP right is recognized as a civil right, and obviously it's now still have a very big influence to the current IP law in Vietnam as well. Between 1954 and 1975, our country was divided into two parts. In the south, we do have an IP system for protecting trademark and copyright and other IP subject, where in the north there's no IP system. After the reunification of the country in 1975 until early 1980, we do not have any IP regulation for protection of IP. But then in 1980s, a number of IP regulation was promulgated to offer the minimum protection for IP. But recent change started from 1986, where the đổi mới renovation policy was launched and transformed the country from a centrally planned to a free market economy. And subsequently, we became a member of the WTO in 2007. That triggered a lot of change, positive change in IP protection in the country. And the most obvious change is the introduction of the IP law issued in November 2005, which has been amended a couple of times, and the last one was just in June this year. We, Vietnam, is a member of a number of very important treaties in IP protection, fundamentally including the Paris Convention for Protection of Industrial and Property Rights, the Patent Cooperation Treaty, PCT, the Madrid Agreement and Madrid Protocol for International Registration of Trademarks, the Berne Convention for Protection of Copyright, and recently, as you all know, we joined the Hague Agreement concerning the International Registration of Industrial Design, which will enter into force in Vietnam by the end of this year. We also recently joined a lot of free trade agreements, most notably the CPTPP Comprehensive Partnership, Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement that entered into force in January 2019. And also, we recently signed the EV-FTA with EU in June 2019 as well. And that is expected to be approved by the EU Parliament beginning 2020. So the agreements require a lot of changes, and the upcoming year the past year and also the upcoming year would observe a lot of positive change and exciting development of IP protection in Vietnam generally and industrial design particularly. So to speak about the industrial design protection, under the Vietnamese law, the condition for protection of an industrial design under the IP law is that it protects the appearance of a product that is expressed in dimensional configuration, lines, shape, colors, or combination of them, which is absolutely new on a worldwide basis, which have some creativeness and which can be used as a prototype for manufacturing on a commercial scale. So we will go through all the condition for protection of industrial design in the subsequent slide. The term of protection for an industrial design in Vietnam is 5 years as from the registration date, but counted from the filing date, and which could be renewed twice. So totally, the maximum term of protection for an industrial design in Vietnam is 15 years. So now we start with the poll question.
Yes, we are going to launch the poll, and you will have more or less 1 minute to answer the question. It's not a difficult one. The question is, if you have registered design in Europe since 2015, can you register it in Vietnam? Please express your preference, and we will comment the results with the speaker. So 1 minute has passed, so we are going now to show the results of our poll. And there is a strong majority for the yes. So according to our attendees, if you have a registered design in Europe since 2015, you can still register in Vietnam. So Mr. Son Duan, what do you think of this answer?
Yeah, the results is very interesting, and it's so that the most of you have the correct answer. I think the likely correct answer would be that if an industrial design has been registered in Europe since 1915, even by yourself, then until now, 2019, it has been 4 years since the first registration in Europe. So basically, the design in Europe should have been losing its novelty, as we have discussed about the requirement of industrial design to be protected, that it should be new, novel in the world. And we discuss later on in a subsequent slide about the novelty requirement. But basically, that 4 years later, after you register the design in Europe, then it would not likely be able to register in Vietnam because of losing novelty. So moving to the next slide, we will continue to discuss about the definition as well as the eligible design for industrial design protection. Firstly, as we have discussed earlier, the industrial design should be the appearance of a product, and basically that is eye appeal to the consumer, that is visible to the consumer when being used. So some design feature of some internal part of a product that cannot be seen during use, that would not likely be accepted as protectable industrial design. Now we discuss the novelty requirement. Under the Vietnamese law, the condition of novelty of an industrial design is that it is significantly differ from other industrial designs that are already disclosed in many forms, in use or description in writing, in Vietnam or in any country in the world, before the date the industrial design is applied for protection. So there would be some exception for this novelty requirement. For example, if the design that you are applying for have been published by another person with the permission to apply for the industrial design, and if you apply for the such industrial design within 6 months from that unauthorized publication, then your industrial design still not losing the novelty. The second exception would be where the industrial design you are applied for was published in the form of scientific presentation by you, and that within 6 months from that publication of the scientific presentation, you apply for the industrial design Vietnam, then the designs also consider not losing the novelty. The third exception would be where it was exhibited at the National Exhibition of Vietnam or an officially recognized international exhibition by the person having the right to apply. And of course, within 6 months, you apply for registration, then the design that has been disclosed at the exhibition will still be considered as not losing the novelty. We see that from the definition of the novelty requirement, there's a phrase saying that the industrial design is considered as novel if it is not substantially different. It is substantially different from other industrial designs that has been disclosed. And how it can be considered as substantially different from each other, then we look at the different feature of the product, of the design, and the feature that are not easily noticeable and memorable, which cannot serve as to distinguish the industrial design as a whole with each other, then in that case be considered as not substantially different. On the right side of the slide, you see the two pictures. The pictures above is the design of the chair that has been applied, and it is considered by the examiner of the design department of the IP Office of Vietnam as not substantially different from the design of the chair cited in the picture below, which has been applied in an earlier design application. The second condition for protection of industrial design under the IP law of Vietnam is that it holds some level of creativeness. It's not kind of very extreme level of creativeness as for patent, for invention, but for industrial design, it still requires some level of creativeness, and it can be considered as creative if it cannot be easily created by a person with ordinary skill in the art, on the basis that other industrial design has been publicly available to him or her. She can easily create such a design. Then that industrial design can be considered as not having creativeness. We see at on the slide on the right side the picture of a simple box. Such a design of a box should be considered as simple and does not have any creativeness to be eligible for copyright design protection under the IP law of Vietnam. The other subject matter that is excluded from design protection should be we are talking about the design that are purely functional, attributable to technical characteristic or for technical purpose of the product. Under the law of Vietnam, as well as in many other countries, it cannot be protected as industrial design. An example demonstrating this should be on the picture shown on the slide. You see the design of a corkscrew. So that corkscrew have the design of the spiral that can be used to open, to uncork the bottle. And to serve that function for opening the bottle cap, any corkscrew should have that spiral design to perform that function. So it is technically required, and that design should not be subject to any design protection under the Vietnamese law. So that's a general information about the condition for protection of industrial design in Vietnam. And as we have mentioned earlier, Vietnam recently joined many free trade agreement and international agreement, including the CPTPP, the EVFTA, and excitingly, we have joined the Hague Agreement on International Registration of Industrial Design. These agreements require Vietnam to make some changes, and expected change to be made under the IP law of Vietnam to be in compliance with the requirement with the provision of the international agreement, particularly as required under the CPTPP and the EVFTA. There should be some changes under the Vietnamese law to accommodate the protection of the design of the component or part of a product within the context of the CPTPP and EVFTA. The Vietnamese law also have the provision for protection of a part of product, but subject to some stricter requirement. And we will discuss more in the upcoming slide. Also, it's expected that the Vietnamese law also need to have some change regarding the formality requirement of design application to make sure that the nationally applied application and the internationally applied registration should be subject to the same formality requirement. Now we look at the requirement for application for registration of the industrial design under the law of Vietnam. As we see, the law requires that each application must endure the unity requirement, meaning that one application can only apply for one subject matter, and meaning an industrial design of a product, and one application cannot claim for protection of a number of different industrial design, which is also we will discuss later a little bit different from the application under the Hague Agreement. The unity requirement also allow for an application to claim protection of one or more than one embodiments, meaning alternative to an industrial design. So that's some variant of the alternative solution of the one single industrial design as we look at later, and or one application can also be considered as having the unity if it is applying for the industrial design of different item of a set of a product. So this is concerning the industrial design of a product. We see we have mentioned about the component or part of a product. So under the Vietnamese law, then the design must be applied to a particular product, and it have to be attached to the product. And if it is a part of the product that cannot be circulated independently on its own as a product, it cannot be disassembled from the product, then it cannot be eligible for protection of industrial design, which is a little bit more stricter than the provision under CPTPP as well as the EVFTA, as we have discussed. Looking at the example of the picture of the bottle on the slide, we see the pattern, decorative pattern attached to the bottle. It cannot be by itself be eligible as the industrial design. Looking at the design pattern D543348 for shoes, we see that the partial design of the shoe, of the part of the shoe which is not disassemblable from the shoe itself, under the Vietnamese law is not eligible for design protection. Here we see the example of the part of the product which can be circulated independently and can be disassembled from the home product, then it would be eligible for copyright protection. That we look at the steering wheel, which by itself can be can serve as can be eligible for design protection. And here the slides show the example of one application applying for a number of embodiments, meaning alternatives of industrial design. So we see the different version of the chair, which is have basic design common features, and that can be considered as different embodiments of a single design that can be claimed under one single application for design protection. Here the example of a set of product which can also be eligible for design protection. We see the set of a design of the cup, tea cup and teapot, which can be used together as a set of product. And to apply for design protection locally, filing directly with the Internet Intellectual Properties Office of Vietnam under the name of IP Vietnam, then the application file, if you are from overseas, entities overseas applying for design protection in Vietnam, you should have to authorize local agent to file the application form on your behalf. You cannot file directly to the IP Vietnam. The government fees for an industrial design application is around 82 euro to 154 euro, depending on the number of drawing and embodiments, alternatives that attached to the design that you claim for protection. And the service fee of the local agent would be around averagely 200 euro. And this is excluding the fee for drafting the design specification, which is also required to be included in the application, and that would be subject to another 91 euro. The design application need to include clear drawing and photo showing the perspective view, front view, back rear, side view, top view, base view, close view, and the views of the design of the product during the use, and showing the basic feature of the design claim for protection. And there would be description about the drawings or the photos. There should be description about the feature characteristics as well as the what you claim for protection in the industrial design. If you have found an application in a country being a member of Paris Convention earlier, and if you apply for the same design in Vietnam within 6 months from the date of the first application in the another country being member of Paris Convention, then you can claim the priority right from the earlier application. So in the next slide, we see some overview and comparison about trademark protection and industrial design protection as well as copyright protection, which is different option for protection of the product in Vietnam. Regarding trademark, we see that the trademark is the sign that is visible, including word or figurative elements or the combination of them, which should be highly distinctive and have quite some distinctiveness that can serve as a trademark. And the trademark registration is 10 years term, and it can be renewed indefinitely for every 10 years terms. For industrial design, then that is the appearance of the product, and as we have discussed, and it's novel to the world and have some creativeness. The design pattern is valid for a term of 5 years and can be renewed twice to the maximum term of 15 years. As for copyright, that is a protection of the work of authorship fixed in a tangible medium of expression. So it's protection of the specific form of expression of the idea, and it has some aesthetic value. So we see that the copyright is protected without registration upon the creation of the work, and it shall be protected for a term of 75 years from the publication, or 100 years if it has not been published within 25 years. And that we are talking about the protection of the copyright work that is in the form of work of applied art. And registration is with the Copyright Office is not a precondition for protection, but it is highly advisable to obtain, which may be helpful in enforcement. In terms of the difficult level in enforcement, then the trademark registration is most enforceable, where for industrial design patent, the enforceability is some more difficult because it's still something very new to the authorities, where the enforcement of the copyright is very difficult and less straightforward because it requires a lot of evidence of copying and the intentional act of the infringer in violating the copyright. So we look at this case study where we see the overlapping protection of different aspects of IP right, design, copyright. In a case in Vietnam, we have the party named SunGuard apply for the design of the toothpaste. They applied for design protection in November 2000 and subsequently granted with the design patent in October 2003. Another party having the box design named Misa Beer, which they obtained copyright registration in July 2002, which is earlier than the granting date of the patent design for SunGuard, but later than the priority date, the date of application for SunGuard. This case has been going to the IP office, going to the copyright office, and then going to the court, and that's quite complicated dispute over the court in the court. But finally, it was decided that the design patent for SunGuard should prevail the copyright registration for Misa Beer. But however, we also noted that Pfizer also have the Bengay box having a very similar design that was granted design patent in 1994, which is the earliest one, which posed to the consideration of possible invalidation of the design patent for SunGuard. So now we look at some watch out tips regarding the creation of the industrial design as well as securing proper protection for the industrial design when you enter into the service supplier agreement or agreement with the vendors for creation or designing your product. So if you contract with an outsource the creation of the design of your product with a third party, the agreement should be make sure to include an IP clause that to ensure you own the ownership over the industrial design as well as copyright over what is created under the agreement, and also should have the clause that protect yourself from any possible conflict with third party, and there should be warranty and undertaking regarding third party rights by the vendor. The IP clause in the agreement should also have a provision to make sure that you would be entitled to file the application for protection of what is created under the agreement, and the duty and obligation of the vendors as well as party related to them in furnishing the required documentation and signing the required documentation for you in applying for protection of your IP, including industrial design. The agreement should also have a provision concerning your right over any improvement by any party, by the vendors, and also very importantly concerning the moral rights. As we see in Vietnam, the provision in the IP law protect the moral right of the author of the copyright as well as design heavily. So any unless there's specific agreement within the party, any modification of the design or copyright work should also be should got the permission from the designer or from the author of the work, which is very burdensome in many cases. So it is important to make sure that the agreement have a provision concerning the moral right. Also, the remuneration is also important. If the two parties do not have any agreement on remuneration, then automatically the author of the design will be entitled to a payment of 10% of revenue gained by the patent owner from the use of the design, and also 15% of the total amount of money received by the patent owner on each payment upon the granting of the license of the industrial design subsequently during the use of the industrial design. So it's very important to notice this and make sure that there's an agreement on the remuneration or the waive of the right remuneration from the designer, to be agreed in advance. Of course, there should be agreement, the clause, non-disclosure agreement, to make sure that the designer, the vendors keep everything confidentially. So the next slide would be we are coming to the next poll question.
Yes, thank you. We are launching our new poll question. The question is even simpler than the first one. Have you considered to register your industrial design in multiple countries? Yes or no? In this case, of course, there is no right or wrong answer. Is a way to assess your current position regarding your design registration. So we are waiting for 1 minute and then we will broadcast the results. So now we are going to broadcast the results. And we see that a very strong majority of our attendees today have considered to register the design in multiple countries. So I think this is why you are here. And I will give you the floor back to Mr. Sonduan to continue the presentation and comment the results.
Thanks, Marta. So the common interest in applying for registration of industrial design, protection of industrial designs in multiple countries, and that is perfectly fit with the content that we discussed today in the upcoming slides about the Hague agreement that's allowing the applying for protection of industrial design in a number in many countries under the one centralized application with the International Bureau, and designating protection in a number of countries at the same time, up to 73 territories actually until now. And we will speak about the benefits of using the Hague system to obtain design overseas. As we see, it is the system allowing the centralized acquisition and maintenance of industrial design by filing one single application for a single international registration with effect in one or more designated country. And as we said, the number of countries can be designated can be up to 73 territories in the world. We see that globally, recently a number of countries have joined the Hague system. We see the name of Korea, Japan, and USA. China may join in the near future, but we don't know when. In ASEAN country, Singapore, Brunei, Cambodia, and recently Vietnam are already the member of the Hague system. So if you consider applying for design protection in Asian country, then if you consider applying for protection in Singapore, Brunei, and Cambodia and Vietnam, or a number of countries in this country, then you may consider using the Hague system, which is more economical and simpler than filing directly in each of this country. So Vietnam joined the Hague system by making the deposit of their assessment document in September 30, 2019, and become the 71st member of the Hague Union. And as we said, the agreement will enter into force in Vietnam on the last day of the year. On the next coming slide, we will see the difference between applying internationally using the Hague system and filing individually into individual country using the national route. So if filing directly to Vietnam under the national route, then the application shall be filed through a local agent, as we have discussed earlier, and it would be subject to a formality examination for 1 month. After that, if the application meets the formality requirement, it will be published within another 1 month for opposition purpose. So any third party looking at the public application may have the opinion against the granting of protection for that design, and it will be subject to substantive examination, that is considering the whether or not it meets the condition for protection, and the period for substantive examination will be 7 more months. And if it meets the protection condition, then the IP office will issue decision of grant. If it does not, then they will issue a refusal, and you have the right to file appeal against it. If the design patent is granted, it would be published in the official gazette within 1 month as well. This is the statutory time limit, but in fact, because of the heavy workload, it usually prolonged to maybe double this time. Could be 1.5 years or 2 years for an application from filing to registration. Going through the international route, so there's only one single application file using the Hague system, filing to the International Bureau, and it will be subject to formality examination for 6 months. If it meets the formality requirement, then it would be published by the International Bureau in the International Design Bulletin, and then the International Bureau will not carry out the substantive examination of the design. That would be subject to the work of the national office, IP office, and they will carry out the substantive examination of the design within 6 months. If there's no opposition by any third party, then it will be within 6 months. And after 6 months, if there's no action from the national office, then it would be considered as automatically protected in Vietnam. So there's time limitation here. It cannot be prolonged. So we can be, as opposed to the national route, for international route, the time limit is kind of very certain here and cannot be extended. And we will go through the benefit of using the Hague system, filing under the international route, as opposed to the national route, filing directly to country like Vietnam. So using the Hague system, the benefit is that it's simplified. You can file only one application in one office with one set of drawing using one language, and it's one currency as well, and that would have a result of one international registration. You can manage the renewal, modification, and any procedure, any change subsequent to the registration um, unifiedly, centrally by using the Hague system, as opposed to filing directly to many country under the national route. So you have to manage at the same time many applications in many offices using many set of drawing, depending and complying with different formality requirement. Obviously, many languages and many currencies. You have to manage the registration and renewal and modification of the post-registration design pattern in a number of countries. And of course, as you are filing in many countries, and in many countries, you have to use the local agent to different local agent to manage the application as well as the design pattern for you. As we said, the time frame for examination is also usually prolonged because of the workload. So it's not certain and can be certain about the time frame as using a Hague system. Some disadvantage of using the filing international registration using the Hague system is that when filing one single application, but the condition for protection should be subject to the discretion of the local IP office of each country. So you should know the condition for protection in the country that you desire to obtain protection. And also they have a different filing requirement as well. Different requirement regarding reproduction, meaning drawing of photos of the design. So you need to do some research and to have knowledge about this thing in order to avoid any office action from this IP office when filing the international registration. Also, if you file the application directly to the IP office in each country, then during the handling of the application, the local agent may have a regular contact with the examiner and may monitor the process of the substantive examination, and they may be able to discuss with the examiner about the chance of success, about the eligibility, protectability of the design. You can foresee the possible issue that may happen with your application, but as opposed to the application filing under the Hague system, you will not have that chance to discuss and get the update and detailed follow-up of the progress of the examination of the design pattern file under the Hague system with the local office examiners. And if your application is refused in any of the designated country, then you're likely to have to use the local counsel to represent you to file a response and appeal to the office action of the local IP office. In terms of costs, then if filing in a single country, then more often than not, like in Vietnam, we would suggest that you file directly using the agent in Vietnam because the cost is lower than a standard fee for filing a Hague international registration. Designating Vietnam is only one country because the cost is a little bit higher. But if you consider applying in a number of countries, including Vietnam or other country being member of the Hague system, then in terms of the cost, it is very recommendable to use the Hague system because the cost would be cheaper when you apply in a number of countries. In terms of requirement, then we see that under the Vietnamese law, if you file locally, then there will be some requirement regarding the picture and photos of the industrial design. Then the drawing presented should not have the broken line. as opposed to that could be allowed under the application of the Hague system. Under the Vietnamese law, then you should have the detailed description as well as claim, which you should also consider when applying for registration in Vietnam. And of course, you are to use the agent. You are also to have the power of attorney signed by the legal side to the agent to allow them to represent you to file the application. So filing the application using a Hague route internationally, then some tips should be that before you start the application process, you should check the design to see if it is novel, if it's have any design that is similar or identical to the design you are planning to apply for using the international search database like the Hague Express available on WIPO website as we seen on the slide. Or also check the design novelty requirement using the global design database also available on WIPO website as well. Of course, as we have discussed, we also need to check the condition for protection in a specific country, and you have to decide the country of interest using the fee calculation page available on the WIPO website to calculate, estimate the fee that you need to budget for the application, and then checking the specific requirement for some country being part of the Hague system that you are designating, but they have some more specific requirement in terms of application form and photo and drawing. And then after you check all that and you are ready to go for applying the design using the Hague route, you can start completing the application form. There's a downloadable paper form as well as you can file electronically using the tool available in the WIPO website. And of course, when you you can create an account to monitor your application as well as the design registration under the Hague system. You can manage it centrally using an account with WIPO website that you can see on the slide. So some watch out and tips for using the national route, as we have all discussed. If you decide to file in one country, then national application is recommended and it should be filed as soon as possible using the local agent. And consider filing the international using Hague system if you file in more than one country. And as we have all discussed, check the design novelty on the available portals and specific requirement by some contracting party before you start the application process. And of course, you need to monitor registration, managing the registration and modification and renewal procedure. All can be done through the Hague e-service available on WIPO website. And some tip regarding, we have discussed about entering Vietnam, and you need to have a watch out and notice about keep everything confidential until the application is filed because of novelty requirements. So don't disclose it, don't advertise it on the website or launch the product before you have applied for registration. Make sure that you have a proper IP clause with any partner, potential partners or vendors. And consider the option for protection, registering your packaging design or design of your product as trademark as well, if possible. And monitor and watch, checking the inspection the local site, checking, monitoring the practice of your partners, local partner, watching in the market and on the gazette, and as well as on the internet for any potential infringement, for enforcement of your IP right to protect your industrial design. So the last slide I would say address is about the enforcement of industrial design in Vietnam. Of course, one option is to send a warning letter to serve the infringer to request seizure of infringement, provision about undertaking and removal or destruction of the infringing elements. The very popular route for quick enforcement is administrative action by the police, by the market surveillance agency, which monitor the market at the retail level, or the Inspectorate of Science Technology, who is specialized in IP field. So for design infringement, likely you have to go through the inspectorate because design is considered to be rather complicated, and the police and the market surveillance agency would be hesitant to take action without the support of the Inspectorate of Science Technology. Border control is also possible. You can also seek the protection at the border by launching application with the custom, and also working with the custom office in monitoring the import of infringing product. They can, in theory, they can also monitor in detail and take action against the export of the infringing product as well. And the final option should be going to the court. Many design dispute is very complicated and is required to go to the civil court. But the procedure at the court is very expensive. It takes a lot of time, and the result is uncertain. The award is usually low because of the knowledge of the judge is also limited, and also because of many uncertainty during the court process. Enforcement of the court judgment is also take time as well. So that's end my presentation today, and I would leave the floor to Martha to help me to monitor the Q&A section.
Yes, thank you. I invite once more the participant to ask questions. We have already received one. And the question is, my company operates on handcraft products and we create a number of unique designs. Can we seek a design protection for handcraft under the industrial design regulation in Vietnam? So to repeat, there is a company that does handcraft products and wants to register the design of their unique product under the industrial design regulation in Vietnam. Is that possible?
Thanks, Martha. Thank you for the question. The answer to that would be quite straightforward. As we have discussed, one of the conditions, the third condition for design protection of the design in Vietnam is that it should be usable as a model for mass production. So something that can only be created uniquely and cannot be like a prototype for mass production, like the handicraft product, then it is likely to be not reachable as an industrial design.
Okay, thank you. I think it's very clear, straightforward answer. Let's go with another question. My design has been granted for protection in France 1 month ago. Is it still possible to submit another design application using the Hague system and designating other countries, including Vietnam? So there's a company in France, they have a design since 1 month ago, and they are asking if it's possible to submit another application to use the Hague system now.
So the design application was filed in France first, right? 1 month ago, they applied for, yeah. I would say that is possible. The the Hague system is different from the Madrid registration of trademark in that the international registration does not need to rely on any basic registration in the home country. But if the application has been filed earlier in France and it is still within 6 months from the application date in France, then it still be able to claim the priority under the Paris Convention for the international registration. So it's possible.
Okay.
Yep.
A clear no and a clear yes. I think it's perfect. And since there are no other questions, I will thank you, the speaker, for this very insightful. Wait, we have a question. Do we have something? No. For this insightful conversation. And I thank you all the participants, and the registration of the webinar and the PPT are going to be on our website in the upcoming working days. So thank you all, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.